I reached the Grand Imperial Hotel late, the birthday cake still warm in my hands. The second I stepped inside, every head turned. The room didn't just look at me. It judged me. I could feel it. Whispering, laughing, smirking. I tried to apologize, but before a single word made it out, the cake was ripped from my hands and shoved straight into my face. Cold frosting smashed against my skin. Crumbs slid down my collar, into my hair, across my shirt. The taste of sugar and humiliation hit my tongue at the same time. People laughed. Phones came up, flash after flash. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, frozen, trembling, covered in cake, while the whole room watched, like my pain was entertainment. Asterisk, asterisk. Part 1. I reached the Grand Imperial Hotel at 8:47 p.m. 13 minutes late, the birthday cake was still warm in my hands, the box slightly dented from how tightly I'd been gripping it during the entire sprint from the subway station. My uniform shirt clung to my back, damp with sweat and panic. My delivery bag kept sliding off my shoulder, and my belly round obvious. Impossible to hide anymore, pressed against the bottom of the cake box like a reminder of every mistake I'd ever made. The hotel's golden revolving doors spun slowly in front of me. Through the glass, I could see them. The guests, the chandeliers, the laughter that looked like it belonged in a world I'd never touch. I hesitated, not because I was scared of being late. I was always late these days. My body moved slower. My energy ran out faster. The baby kicked at the worst times, and I'd have to stop, breathe, pretend I was fine. No. I hesitated because I knew what would happen the second. I walked in, they would look at me, and they would judge. But I didn't have a choice. This delivery was my last chance to keep my job. My manager made that clear this morning when I clocked in 20 minutes late for the third time this week. "One more mistake, Aiden," he'd said, barely looking up from his phone. "One more, and you're done." So I pushed through the doors. The ballroom was massive. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they felt like the sky. The floors were polished marble that reflected everything: the gold trim, the designer gowns. The men in tuxedos who probably spent more on their watches than I made in a year. And then there was me. Delivery uniform, scuffed sneakers, pregnant belly I couldn't hide, no matter how I adjusted my jacket. The second I stepped inside, the noise didn't stop. But something else did. Movement. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned, eyes locked onto me like I'd just set off an alarm I couldn't hear. I tried to smile, tried to look professional. Tried to pretend I didn't notice the way a woman in a silk gown wrinkled her nose at my scuffed sneakers, or the way a man in a tuxedo whispered something to his friend, and they both laughed. I kept walking, head down, hands tight around the cake box. I made it maybe 10 steps before someone stepped in front of me. A woman, mid-40s, platinum. Blonde hair pulled so tight it looked painful. Her dress probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. She looked at me, then at the cake, then at my stomach. Her lip curled. "You're late." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I opened my mouth to explain. The oven at the bakery broke. Traffic was a nightmare. I literally ran 8 blocks because the subway was down and I couldn't afford an Uber. And she didn't let me finish. She grabbed the cake box, and then that moment happened. The one I told you about. Cold frosting against my face. The laughter. The phones. The flashes. But what I didn't tell you was what happened next. The room erupted. Laughter, loud, sharp, cruel laughter that bounced off the marble floors and wrapped around me like a noose. Phones came up. Flashes went off. Someone yelled, "Oh my God, did you get that?" Someone else said, "This is going on Instagram." I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I just stood there, trembling, tasting sugar and shame, while the entire ballroom watched me fall apart. And then I felt it. The baby kicked, not soft, not gentle. Hard. Like even they were trying to tell me to run, but I didn't run. I dropped to my knees. The frosting made it hard to see. My vision blurred. I reached out, hands shaking, trying to grab the crushed cake box like it mattered. Like I could still fix this. Someone stepped on it before I could. A designer heel crushed the cardboard flat. The woman didn't even look down. She just kept talking to her friend like I wasn't there. Like I was nothing, and maybe I was. From the laughter, from the cruelty that felt louder than anything I'd ever known. That's when someone gasped. "Oh my God, is he pregnant?" The laughter shifted, not softer, worse, meaner. Double quotes, wait, seriously, why is he even working like that? That's so inappropriate. Who let him in here? I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. I wanted to wake up in my tiny apartment and realize this was just another nightmare. But at WASN single quotes, this was real, and then I felt it again, a presence different from the rest. I lifted my head, cake still dripping down my chin, and through the blur of tears and frosting, I saw him a man, tall, broad shoulders, dark suit that looked like it cost more than my entire life. His face was calm, but his eyes weren't. They were sharp, focused, and they were looking at me, not at the mess, not at the joke, not at the spectacle, at me, everyone else saw a punchline. He saw a person, and something inside me cracked, because for the first time tonight, I didn't feel invisible. He started walking toward me, slow, controlled, like he wasn't crossing a ballroom, but entering a battlefield. The laughter died. Phones lowered, stepped back, and my heartbeat broken. Exhausted, barely holding on, found a reason to keep going. Because someone was coming. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be saved, or if I was terrified that I actually might be. Part 2, he kept walking. Every step he took made the room quieter, not because he said anything, not because he gestured or raised his voice, but because people knew this wasn't just some guest. This was the owner, the CEO, the man whose name was probably carved into the hotel's foundation. I tried to stand up before he reached me. I didn't want him to see me like this on my knees, covered in frosting, crying like a child who couldn't take a joke, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. They were numb, weak. I pressed my palms flat against the cold marble floor and tried to push myself up, but my arms shook so badly I almost collapsed again. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, clean, expensive, the kind of scent that probably came in a bottle I'd never be able to afford. Close enough that I could feel the weight of his stare. I couldn't. I just kept my eyes on the floor, on the smashed cake, on the crumbs scattered across marble that probably cost more per square foot than my monthly rent. I waited for him to yell, or fire me, or tell me to leave because I was embarrassing his hotel, ruining his wife's birthday, making a scene in front of people who mattered. But he didn't yell, he didn't sigh. Crouched down a man in a $10,000 suit, kneeling in front of me. The entire ballroom gasped, my breath caught in my throat. I still didn't look at him. I couldn't. If I looked at him, I'd break completely. Then I felt it. His hand warm, steady, careful. He reached out and brushed a bit of frosting from my cheek with his thumb. The touch was so gentle, I almost flinched, like he thought I might shatter if he pressed too hard. Maybe I would. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The room held its breath. My heart pounded so loud I thought he could hear it. Then I whispered, barely audible. "Barely there. I didn't mean to ruin anything." His hand paused. He didn't pull away. He just stayed there, his thumb still resting lightly against my cheek. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, quiet, meant only for me. "You didn't ruin anything." I blinked, tears mixed with frosting. I still couldn't look at him. His eyes traveled, not in the way people had been staring at me all night, not judging, not mocking, noticing. He saw the curve of my stomach, the way my hand instinctively moved to cover it, the way I tried to make myself smaller even though I was already on the floor, and I waited for it. The disgust, the confusion, the inevitable question everyone always asked, "Why are you even working like that?" But he didn't ask. He just looked back at my face, and something in his expression shifted. Not pity, anger, not at me, at them. And when he turned to face the crowd, the entire room froze. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of voice that made walls listen. "I invited guests to this event," he said, calm and cold, "not bullies." Silence. Heavy, suffocating. A woman in the back, the same one who shoved the cake in my face, scoffed nervously. "You're defending him? This is ridiculous. He's clearly, what?" He cut her off, his tone sharp enough to draw blood. Clearly human, clearly working. Clearly trying, she stammered. Someone next to her muttered something under their breath. He took a step forward, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped. He came here to do his job. He came here late, yes. Tired, yes. But he came. His eyes swept across the crowd, daring anyone to interrupt. How many of you would have kept going after what you just did to him? No one answered. He turned back to me, and this time, I finally looked up. His eyes met mine, and for the first time all night, I felt like I could breathe. He extended his hand, not a command, not an expectation, an offer. Stand up, he said softly. I stared at his hand. Strong, steady, real. I didn't know if I deserved it. I didn't know if this was some kind of dream or joke or mistake, but I reached out anyway. His fingers closed around mine, warm and firm, and he pulled me to my feet. The room stayed silent, and as I stood there, frosting still smeared across my face. My uniform stained. My belly pressed against the fabric of my jacket, I realized something. He wasn't just helping me stand, he was standing with me. A voice from the crowd broke the silence, sharp, entitled. Then choose him or the event, because both don't belong here. My chest tightened. The CEO's hand, still holding mine, tightened too. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at me, and then he said the words, I never thought I'd. Here, I'm not sending him away. His voice was steady, final. I'm sending you. The ballroom erupted in chaos, but all I could hear was my heartbeat, and all I could feel was his hand, still holding mine like he had no intention of letting go. Part 3, security moved fast. 2 men in dark suits appeared at the edges of the ballroom, polite but firm, gesturing toward the exits. The woman who had shoved the cake in my face turned red, sputtering protests about knowing people, and this being unacceptable. But no one was listening to her anymore. The CEO didn't even look her way. He just kept his hand on my back, light, steady, grounding, and guided me away from the crowd. We walked through a side hallway I hadn't noticed before. The noise from the ballroom faded behind us, replaced by the soft hum of expensive silence. The kind of quiet that only exists in places built for people who never had to yell to be heard. I kept my head down, still tasting sugar and humiliation on my tongue. We stopped in front of a door. He opened it without knocking and gestured for me to step inside. It was a private lounge. Soft lighting, velvet furniture, a small table set with champagne glasses, and untouched odd. Everything smelled like lavender and money, and standing in the center of the room was a woman. She was beautiful, not in the sharp, intimidating way the other guests had been. Her beauty was softer, warmer. She wore a cream-colored dress that flowed when she moved, and her eyes, kind, curious, landed on me immediately. She smiled, not the fake, polite kind. A real one. You must be the delivery driver, she said gently. I nodded, suddenly painfully aware of how I looked. Frosting in my hair, stains on my shirt, the faint tremble in my hands I couldn't quite control. She walked toward me, and I instinctively took a step back. She stopped. It's okay, she said softly. I'm not going to hurt you. Her voice was so kind it almost broke me. The CEO cleared his throat. This is my wife Elena. It's her birthday. Oh God, I ruined her birthday. I brought a smashed cake. Got humiliated in front of her guests, caused a scene. And I'm so sorry, I blurted out, my voice cracking. I really tried. The bakery oven broke, and I had to wait, and then the subway was down, and I ran, but Elena's voice cut through my spiral. Gentle but firm. Breathe. I tried. I really did. She stepped closer, careful, and placed a hand on my shoulder. You made it, she said. That's what matters. I blinked at her, confused. But the cake is still here, she smiled. A little messy, maybe, but still here. She glanced at her husband, and something passed between them. A look I didn't fully understand, but felt anyway. She turned back to me. What's your name? Aiden, I whispered. Aiden, she repeated it like it mattered. Like I mattered. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading all night. How far along are you? My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. Protective, defensive. 7 months? I said quietly. She didn't flinch, didn't judge, didn't look at me like I was a mistake. That must be hard, she said simply. Working like this, I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. Elena looked at her husband again, And this time, he nodded back. She took a breath and smiled at me. "Would you help me fix the cake?" I stared at her. "What? The cake?" She gestured toward the door. "It's out there, right? Smashed, covered in frosting, probably unsalvageable by most standards." I nodded slowly. "But I don't care about most standards." Her smile widened. "I care about effort, and you put in the effort, didn't you?" My throat tightened. I tried then. "Let's finish what you started." I didn't understand why she was being kind to me. I didn't understand why her husband had defended me. I didn't understand any of this, but when she extended her hand, I took it. Part 4, we walked back into the ballroom together. Alina on one side, the CEO, whose name I finally learned was Elias Carter, on the other, and me in the middle, still covered in frosting. Still trembling, still pregnant and exhausted and unsure if I was dreaming, but I wasn't alone. The crowd had thinned. Most of the people who'd laughed at me were gone, ushered out by security, or embarrassed into leaving. The ones who remained watched us carefully, unsure what to do. On a side table near the back, someone had salvaged what was left of the cake. It looked terrible, lopsided, half the frosting gone, the decorations smeared beyond recognition, but it was still there. Alina walked up to it, examined it for a moment, then turned to me with a grin. "I think it's perfect. I couldn't help it." I laughed. A short, broken sound, but real. She handed me a knife. "Will you do the honors?" I stared at the blade in my hand, then at the cake, then at her. "You want me to cut the first slice?" She nodded. "You brought it. You kept it safe. You earned it." My hands shook as I positioned the knife over the cake. I was painfully aware of everyone watching, of the phones still recording, of the fact that I was about to be part of someone's story, maybe a good one this time. I cut the slice, wasn't clean. The cake was too soft, too damaged. But it held together. Alina clapped. Then Elias. Then, slowly, hesitantly, the rest of the room joined in. It wasn't loud, it wasn't thunderous, but it was real, and it was for me. Later, after the guests filtered out and the ballroom emptied, Elias walked me to the door. The cold night air hit my face, sharp and sobering. I pulled his jacket, which he'd draped over my shoulders earlier, tighter around me. "Thank you," I said. My voice was hoarse, tired. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "I do." I looked at him, really looked at him. "You didn't have to do any of that." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know what it's like. To be seen as less. To be treated like you don't belong." I didn't believe him at first. He was a CEO. Rich, powerful, untouchable. But the look in his eyes told me he wasn't lying. "If it's okay," he said carefully, "I'd like to see you again." My heart stuttered. "Why?" He smiled, small, genuine. "Because I think you deserve more than one good night." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "Yeah?" I whispered. "I'd like that too." He handed me a card with his personal number on it, and as I walked away into the cold, frosting still stuck in my hair and hope flickering in my chest, I realized something. Maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I was just waiting for someone to see me. And maybe, just maybe, tonight was the beginning of that.